Following Jakob Ingebrigtsen's 3:43 mile, 7:23 3K double at the pre-classic, a combination of times that's arguably one of the best the sport has ever seen, he would quickly tout some awfully confident predictions for what he plans on doing regarding the future of his world record endeavors.
I've read an article, I think the Norwegian translation was correct, saying that you wanted the world record from every distance from the 1500 meters to the marathon. Is that right? And which of those records do you think is the hardest?
Yeah, it's about right. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's just about practice. You could say the same thing about speed and, running relaxed at 55 laps, but I would say that's definitely the hardest part.
Does that include the steeplechase? Is that on your goal to break that? Yeah.
Now, when I came across this interview last year, it wasn't like I fully doubted Jakob's abilities to tackle the shorter disciplines in his current form, and then to transition into the longer disciplines to dominate those when he got older. But let's be honest here, who the hell comes out and says, yeah, I just want to own every world record known to man, and doesn't face some level of doubt or suspicion? Before this proclamation though, Jakob decimated the 2-mile and 2,000 meter world records, and while unconventional, these were still highly competitive marks with the likes of legends Daniel Komen and Ishimo Garouge occupying them, two of the greatest mid-distance runners to ever grace the sport. He also inched much closer to the mile world record, now being 0.6 of a second away. Following this interview, however, Jakob's Olympic preparation was halted by an injury during the winter of 2024, and for a couple months it didn't really seem like we were going to see anything resembling a world record at all, as he was essentially racing back into fitness to gain his confidence for the Paris Games. At the notoriously fast Monaco track though, a 3:26.73 1500 reignited the conversation of Jakob breaking some sort of world record this year, even if this gap is still incredibly difficult to fill by his own accord. Following the Olympics, Jakob went home with a heartbreaking 4th place in the 1500 after trying to lead the race in near world record pace, but his 5,000 gold was a display of dominance no one had ever seen before, at least not since Kenenisa Bekele's 2008 gold in Beijing. Capitalizing off of his Paris fitness, the Norwegian tried to refill his ego in the metric mile in Lausanne, but didn't exactly have the wheels to get close to his personal best, but still won the race in a solid 3:27.83. The next location on Jakob's list then was Silesia, where he'd revisit the 3,000 for the first time since 2021. People didn't get too excited though because the pace lights were set for 7:23, which would break the European record of 7:24.68, but was honestly a far cry from Daniel Komen's 7:20.67 that hadn't been beaten for over 2 decades now. But when the last 600 approached, everyone quickly realized the European record was not going to happen at all, but would run such a historical mark that calling it a world record would almost be an unsatisfactory title at this point.
0.67 is going to be smashed here by the Norwegian. It's a world record yet again for Jakob Ingebrigtsen. He's just double checking that time. He's broken it by over 3 seconds.
There is no other way to say this, but this is probably the greatest distance running record of all time. Not because of how old the record is, or even because of Komen's phenomenal 7:20.67 being surpassed. To break it by 3 entire seconds is such a hilariously massive skill gap that it surpasses the old mark by 21 points on the IAAF point system, and is now ranked as the second highest distance running mark across every discipline up to the marathon, as Kiptum's 2 flat 35 ranks as the current highest just above at 1322 points. If you're unfamiliar with this point system, to simplify, these are around the marks they are roughly equivalent to from a raw performance standpoint. Now, whether you want to debate which one is better when you factor in all sorts of things isn't exactly that relevant here, but this single time has fully convinced me that there is a legitimate chance this Norwegian guy could truly break every record from the 1500 up to the marathon. I mean, even someone like Bernard Lagat gave him the go as basically dethroning the crown jewel of distance running records. If you're not going to believe a former 326 guy, I don't know. I don't know what other confirmation you need at this point. Now, the thing is, because we have this one-of-a-kind performance at our disposal to work with, I think we can effectively predict within reasonable grounds how likely it is that Jakob could break the remaining 7 world records he desires to surpass. I should clarify that we're simply entertaining him breaking all the records in general, not that he would hold all of them simultaneously too. I think we'd be getting a little off the rails in that case. Let's start off with the shortest discipline, and then work our way up to the longer ones.
They race to the finish line. Jakob Garouge is going to hang on. He's got a world record.
As it currently stands, both the metric and imperial mile records have yet to be broken, as Morocco's Isham El Garouj remains the king in both of them. This forces Jakob to not only break the record in the 15, but would also have to replicate this level of proficiency twice to do it in the mile as well. A race that is held much less often at prestigious meets, but is technically a bit softer to break, as Jakob's current 1500 personal best converts to a 3:43.27. Given how metronomic and aerobically dominant of a runner he is compared to other milers though, I would say that his true potential lies somewhere between the raw pace equivalent and the actual conversion, but I could be totally off on that, and I don't know, maybe it's not worth speculating that much. Jakob is also still pretty young, but age is a limiting factor historically when we look at the top 10 times in the 15 and the mile, as ages 25 or 26 seems to be the most consistent age when it comes to peak performance in this event. He's got a few more years, but it's much less time than you may think. This may come off as a bit superficial, but the biggest thing that makes me believe Jakob will likely break one or both of these records is his extraordinarily calculated approach to breaking this specific record in the first place. He has yet to go into a race expecting a world record to happen, and seems to understand the progression curve very scientifically, as a few tenths of a second here and there is more than satisfactory of an improvement rate, even if these personal bests come once a year. Outside of his somewhat campy 2022 season, the data shows that he is continually improving in the event, and has yet to reach the traditional peak age for it as well. So if history repeats itself, the curve keeps moving slowly but surely, and Jakob stays healthy, I would throw up a nice 8 out of 10 difficulty overall for Jakob breaking the mile or 1500 record, and probably like an 8.5 to breaking both of them.
Makes it a trifecta in Paris by more than a second.
Next, we have the 3,000 meter steeplechase record. The data on Jakob's recent steeplechase endeavors says, well, nothing in the last 5 years. However, if you followed him as an athlete for long enough, you would know that he was a monster in the event as a teenager, embarrassing junior fields and setting the 16-year-old world record that not many people know is also the 17-year-old world record as well. Given his recent performance in the flat 3000 and the fact that he has such a promising background over the barriers, I actually feel like this one might be the easiest for Mr. Ingebrigtsen to beat. Not to mention his open 3000 world record is the equivalent of a 7:46.97 steeple, which even if we're overestimating this conversion, it gives him plenty of room for error even if he's a bit rusty going over the water. 5 out of 10.
A new world record for Joshua Cheptegei. He has roared with the heart of an African lion. He's delivered. It's a world record.
I'm going to group the 5,000 and 10,000 into one nice little category. Jakob is currently the greatest 5,000 meter runner out there right now, and has been for the last 3 years. The guy barely races it formally, but when he does, very rarely is he pushed to the brink, and has not lost since 2021. And the recent Olympics show that all of these 1240 guys can't even come close to him. His aerobic heavy training style realistically makes him a 5,000 plus guy to begin with, so I wouldn't be surprised if it translates over to the 10,000 seamlessly if you threw him into a pristinely paced race. The last time he really put down a fast time in the 5,000 was back in 2021 where he ran 12:48 in Rome for the European record, but he is substantially more fit since then, and the race was paced pretty poorly as well. I'm gonna be honest, the 5,000 will probably also be easy for him to break, and I'd imagine the 10,000 would only take him a couple serious tries before he nabbed that too. We'll say 5.5 out of 10 for the 5,000 and 6.5 for the 10,000, especially since the latter is a bit tougher in general.
By Kelvin Kiptum for a new world record at the Bank of America Chicago Marathon.
Now, I know what you're thinking. We're at this point where entertaining the half or full marathon records are beyond speculation, and I'm just wasting my breath talking about these until we actually see him lace up on the roads. While I agree to an extent, at least let me try to make a promising case for the half marathon one to go down a lot sooner than you may think. Let's be honest, the half marathon statistically speaking, and really logically speaking, is the softest distance record out there right now. First off, the current world record holder is occupied by someone who ran an entire track season the year before, and only really dabbles in road races, and these top two marks done in 2023 are done by track-dominant runners who have a very similar skill set to Jakob. Almost all of the road specialists primarily take up the marathon all-time list, but in the half, it's not uncommon for track guys to just show up to road races here and there, and are just able to destroy half marathons if the course and conditions are satisfactory. To further my point on the half record just not being that super strong comparatively speaking, 57:31 141 is a 1288 on the IAAF point scale, and Jakob has run above that level of quality in a few of his races now. Am I trusting the IAAF point scale a little too much here? I mean, I guess, but given the nature of how a lot of these track guys just casually occupy some of the fastest times in this event, a good chunk of who Jakob has decimated in the 5000, I honestly wouldn't be that surprised if he broke 57 on his first try here. I'm just gonna say it. My hot take is that this will be a 4 out of 10 difficulty for him. It genuinely might be easier than breaking the steeple or 5K record. And now for the marathon. The one most of you are probably the most curious about, and, well, I got nothing. Okay, that's not entirely true. The marathon record is arguably the hardest world record to beat at the moment, not because of the sheer beauty that is the 2 flat 35 set by Kelvin Kiptum of Kenya. I mean, that's a lot of it, to be fair. But combined with just how finicky and delicate running a fast marathon really is in the first place. The sheer volume of training you need to be able to handle is one thing, which I don't think Jakob is foreign to, but there's just so many mid-race factors that can add seconds on seconds for each mile. But thankfully for Jakob, the window for breaking this record will be a lot more lenient given the longevity of marathon runners in the first place. So if the conditions don't line up or his body's not feeling it that day, maybe the pacing's a little off, he'll have a healthy amount of attempts to do so, worst case scenario. However, that's probably the only promising thing I can say, because again, 2 flat 35 is a number that not even Super Shoe era athletes thought was possible this early into their development on a legal course, let alone trying to predict if a 1500 5K guy can step up years and years down the line and do it. But then again, I guess we have seen a lot of shorter discipline specialists transition into the marathon pretty effortlessly and are now dominating the best fields we've probably ever seen before in the sport. Will Jakob need an Adidas Evo Nike equivalent in the future to do it? Will he even be able to handle such a training regimen in the first place on the roads? Or will he be able to translate his already fantastic aerobic engine effortlessly and transform what we understand about the event? All in all, it's kind of impossible to call at the moment compared to every event thus far, but for my money, this record is likely not going to fall. And even if Jakob did have any promise in the marathon right now, it's still the hardest record to break, objectively speaking. But I'm not going to consider it untouchable by him. 9.9, 5 out of 10. When I think about Noah Lyles saying about how he wants to beat Usain Bolt's 100 meter and 200 meter world records, I can't help but be skeptical because, well, not only are they some of the most prestigious marks in all of athletics, but Noah hasn't broken either of them yet, even if he's close-ish in the two, and the 100 meter one is far less likely given 100 meter records are broken right around the age he's at already. He's also only ran in the 9.7s once. You get the point. But with Jakob, I almost have to believe him to some extent that he could genuinely beat all 10 of the world records he says he wants to break, at the very least 9 of them. Whether or not he can hold all 10 simultaneously is an accolade I don't even think I could reasonably entertain at the moment because of how comically insane it sounds, but the very concept of breaking all of them at some point in his career seems absurd, but somehow not as unlikely as we may think in the end. I was reasonably a bit skeptical when he talked about these records last year, but this 3,000 meter time truly proves way more than people think, especially since he's already such an aerobically dominant runner that for some reason could just crank out these blistering 1,500 and 3,000 meter times. Now, all of this is also under the assumption that no one is going to come out of the woodwork within the next few years and truly threaten Jakob. After all, the science of training is developing much more and is becoming more accessible than ever, so who's to say some prodigy from anywhere in the world can't just show up one year and spice things up a bit? We already have a couple runners that have broken Jakob's age world records now, so I don't know. I understand that this video is highly speculative and maybe even nonsensical to some, but for one, this is just meant to be a fun video that's not meant to be taken super seriously. But two, another side of me feels like there is more rationale behind these predictions than there has ever been in the history of distance running, all because of this mark right here. And obviously with the help of everything he's done thus far, and the fact that he's only 23 right now. I don't know, man. I could be talking out of my ass, but I'll hand it off to you guys before I keep just blabbering about. Just keep it at least somewhat civil, please. That's all I'm really asking. At least be better than the people in the comments of this video. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting the channel, and if you want to support the channel for more track and field content like this, come on over and become a patron. Drop a sub, and check out my other links below. I'll see you all in whatever video I upload next, and take care.